Hello and welcome. My name is Karen and I'm coming from Trapology, Boston. We are an escape room and immersive entertainment company located in downtown Boston. Today we are joined by Jackson from Escapism Productions. Hello.
Hello.
I would love to hear a little bit about who you are and maybe even a fun fact that you can't find with a quick Google search.
Okay, well, hi, I am Jackson Kulinski. I am the founder and creative director of Escapism Productions. We are primarily located in Connecticut, although we've also done shows in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. We have a focus on immersive interactive theater, so theater that attempts to break down the walls and kind of bring the audience in and tell interactive stories. But a quick thing you won't necessarily find on Google is that I didn't start off my life, at least my professional life, in theater. While I went to college, I took a lot of production classes, so writing, design, lighting, sound, that sort of thing, even a few acting courses, but my actual degree was in mortuary science. So while I had this background of 4 years worth of electives in theater, I actually went into a profession that was more biology and funeral practices and things like that, which give a fun insight on human psychology, but it's definitely not where I thought I would be today, you know, when it came to everything.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that sounds super interesting. I would love to hear a little bit about how you started there and then shifted towards what you are doing right now, but also was there some kind of light bulb moment where you were like, this is my passion and this is what I want to do instead?
Well, I think even as a child, I was always involved in theater. Right, I was 3 years old, I walked in the fashion show and all these other kids kind of walked on, they were a little meek about it, but I just came out and was like, boom, I am here. So it's always been kind of like a part of my life. But honestly, and this was completely wrong for me to think at the time, when it came time to be like, okay, what am I going to do for college? What am I going to do for my life? I kind of believe that narrative that the arts weren't viable. They weren't something that I could actually have a career in. I know now, I wish I could go back and tell teenage me, like, no, go after it and do it, because it really was my passion. And after kind of going through this very long stretch of, I worked, 6 years in a career after the recession, because I lost my job as a mortician and I lost my job. I was a payroll specialist, and I just kind of started looking and going like, well, now that this has happened to me, what actually makes me happy? Like, and so then I started looking at companies and acting and these groups that were putting together shows. And I loved it. I loved getting back into it. I loved meeting people. I loved seeing the process and what had happened. But I mean, if I'm going to be fair, and I don't think it's like this everywhere, I started noticing that there was only so high I could go, because there was a sense of, well, you haven't been in it for so long and you didn't actually get a degree or make the right connections or anything like that. So I found that there was this wall I was hitting. Or I would pitch a script or an idea. I'm like, hey, I've been working for a little while. I have this great idea for a script. And I was told, maybe not this year. And that kept being pushed off more and more. And I started watching that happen with some other people. And they were starting to also get discouraged. We're like, hey, I've got this great idea, or I want to try a different role. And they were kind of being stopped just because of this, I think, unconscious sense of certain people can do certain things and other people can't. So at that point, I was just like, fine, I could just maybe try doing it myself and give that a whirl. And the kind of that dedication has led me here, and I was able to bring in more people who have maybe slightly different outlooks on everything, but otherwise have been told you can't, because with this company, I always want to be like, yeah, you can do that, and constantly answering yes instead of maybe later.
That's really amazing. I think that it's really cool that not only were you thinking, hey, because I can't find a place to do this, I will make one, but you're also bringing in other people to be like, I don't want you to keep hearing that, no, maybe not now, or maybe later. Like, you can do this now. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring in not just other actors or writers, but also artisans and things like that, because there's some artists out there who are like, hey, I'm having a hard time getting commissions. Okay, do some work for our script for us, design a logo for a show for us. And, or maybe later, it's something kind of maybe like a little bit wider, but maybe designing something that they can make that can then be a tie into the show that audience members can take with them, you know, that kind of thing.
That's really cool. For all the things that you've done, have you ever found inspiration for something that was just in a either like a weird or unusual or just least expected place?
The weird thing, all of the inspiration for everything I've pretty much ever done has come from something weird. I'll either have a dream, and not even necessarily like a nightmare, but just a weird dream that's kind of like, hey, that'd be cool. And I write this 1 or 2 sentence thing down that eventually becomes a whole script later. Or I'll be watching a movie or reading a book, or I'll be like in a historical location and I'll imagine a conversation between 2 characters that have just never really existed before. And that becomes the basis for something bigger. And that becomes the basis for a whole script. So I've got this notepad that's full of 1 or 2 sentence prompts. Then when it's like, okay, it's time to write something new, I'll look at that and go, that's something I could write, you know, a 1 or 2 hour show about. But it comes from the strangest places sometimes, just sometimes out of nowhere.
That's really cool. I think that I love that you can, first of all, I love that you can even remember your dreams, because I feel like I wake up, I'm like, that was so weird. Wait, what was that about? But
oh yeah, that's why the notepad sits right by the bed, and it's just, okay, I'm writing it down, sometimes I'll pass right back out and I'll open it up and go, oh, that must have been what that dream was about, because I don't remember.
I also love that you can take something like just a prompt and kind of run with it and create this whole other world.
It's certainly also collaborative, because I don't just do anything on my own. I'll kind of work with this idea, but I also do pitch it to other people. There are a few other people that I work with right now. I'm working with a man by the name of Jeff Barnes, and then also a woman by the name of Jess Bolduck, and the 2 of them have really helped me. Like, I'll pitch ideas to them and go, hey, is this interesting? And they'll go, yeah, sure. Or they'll tell me, no, that's absolutely stupid. No one's going to like it. Put it down and don't ever look at it again. So it's really good that the both of them have these really great collaborative minds that really do help me. Like, I honestly wouldn't be doing anything narratively or creatively without their help.
Cool. That's awesome. I mean, speaking of this team, like it sounds like you work with some really amazing people and you have a really amazing team. And I would love to know, how do you guys keep things like fun and exciting for you guys as like the creatives and trying to figure out what to do next, but also how do you keep things fun and exciting for your clients to be like, hey, come check out what we're doing next?
I think part of that is just our philosophy with how we write stories and how we come up with them. We've got 2 principal philosophies when it comes to these things. One, we believe in something called retroscripting, which is we will come up with a concept, we'll come up with a story, you know, A, B, C, D, these things need to happen in order to progress the story. But with our actors and with our audiences, we leave room to improv. There isn't this script that is set of this person says this person, then this person says this thing, and then this action needs to happen. We encourage retroscripting, which is a state of allowing the actors to improv the actions and the dialogue, because that leaves room for the audience to play. Actually, it was Jess who kind of coined a phrase that it's like, philosophically and mentally, you have to allow people room to play, because that just encourages them to come in. Everybody wants to come in and have these experiences. They just need the permission to do it. So in a way, whenever someone comes and see a show, they're never getting the same show twice. You know, you could have audience members that kind of are inspired by the story and take it in a completely different direction. And because we leave room for play, we allow the audience to go on that journey with the characters. But then the next time, they could even come to a show, the second show or the third show for the night, and still not get the same experience. So we've had people return 2 or 3 times to the same show, because they know, well, it's not going to end the same way, or it's going to be a little bit of a different journey, or I can take a different path and hang around different characters and get a whole new experience.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, because then you can come with a group of friends, and if a different group of friends wants to go, you can be like, I know it's going to be different. Like, I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm going to have a whole different experience, and it'll still be a good time.
Exactly. And that kind of keeps it fresh, not only for us as creators, for the actors and for the audience members, because, you know, it's always refreshing, it's always new, but they're still taking away a unique experience.
That's awesome. I know that since it's so, since the audience participation is so different every time, do you guys have any fun stories or like any quirky requests where you guys were like, how do we roll this into the thing that we're already doing?
Well, okay, after every show, if we have the time, we try to do a talk back. So maybe a 15-minute, 10-minute long sit down with audience members to kind of get their impression of, if you could have done it differently, how would you have done it? What was your experience like? Do you have any questions for us? Because a lot of times they're based off of like historical locations. So there's a heavy amount of actual history that the stories might be based off of. But this one time that I remember, which kind of clued me into a new ways of doing things. One of the audience members in the talkback, we had done this show. It's actually the show I'm wearing the shirt for. That was based off of like 80s and 90s horror slashers where the audience members got to be involved and they got to hunt down a killer and stop it. And so we invented like this fictional world and this fictional killer with people who were trying to stop him. And at the end, they were kind of like, yeah, I want to know more about this town you created and more about like the history of this guy, like what made him who he was and how that happened. And while we had developed that in the script, just in case people ask questions, we didn't really include it as part of the main narrative. So what that told us is like people love world building. They want to know more. So what we did is while we were running that show another time, we created an ARG so that people could play games online and follow clues and follow hints and learn more about the deep lore. And we learned that that's what people want. So we started including that kind of stuff. And we're doing that now. We're developing some remote games and we're developing some podcasts to expand on this stuff. And it never would have happened if we didn't notice that like this one guy was like, please just tell me more about this town and how it was founded and what happened. And so I don't know, that was just really interesting and sparked a lot more creativity.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really cool that you took that and you're kind of translating that to what you guys are doing now as well. Like, I know that you mentioned a couple of future projects, so I would love to hear about, what you guys are excited about happening next.
Well, number one, the next live show that we have coming up is going to be a show in October. We're working with Connecticut Landmarks at the Isham Terry House in order to build a Victorian mystery story with some supernatural elements. I don't want to give too much away just because it's still developing, but like bringing audiences in and it being part historical of like, hey, this is what people did back in the 19th century to celebrate Halloween or to mourn the dead or to kind of have social time with people like parlor games, but also being a mystery story that people can kind of bite their teeth into. So they're learning about history, but also walking away with this really cool experience. That's in October. We have a show coming up next April. That's a show about, 17th century witchcraft and how that kind of stuff could have actually happened, because everyone's always like, well, if I was alive during the witch trials, you wouldn't have seen me do stuff like that. And we're like, okay, let's prove that then. Let's see what people would really think. But then we also have podcasts that we're developing to, again, expand on that lore, but also some new stuff, because we found a lot of our audiences are like, oh, I wish I could go, but I live on the other side of the country. So we're developing some of those ideas and those narratives to hopefully come out within the next couple of months to kind of bring more stories to people, especially because right now some people are kind of locked up. They might be locked up for a lot longer. We don't want that to stop the storytelling process.
That's really cool. I think that it's also really great that you're thinking about how to include other people who might not be able to get to you guys.
Yeah, exactly. We live in a very big world with a lot of people from all around the world. And live shows are fun. I love audiences. I'm so looking forward to getting back to live audiences. But at the same time, I don't want people to feel left out. Like, I actually got a little sad whenever someone's like, oh, that looks really cool, but I can't come because they live in a completely different hemisphere.
Right.
So instead of saying, well, too bad, it's like, okay, well then what can we do to include you? What can we do to help bring you in and enjoy the experiences with us? Because that's what Escapism Productions is about. It's about collaborative storytelling. And part of that is bringing in as much of an audience as we can so that they can help with that interaction, help build the stories.
That's super cool. Do you think that there's a possibility to have, a very spread out group of people? So say, friends in different countries and, you don't get to see them that often unless you are a true jet setter.
Mm-hmm.
But like, is it possible to be like, hey, I'm here in Boston, but my friend is in London and I have another friend that's in Italy. Like, could everyone come together for something like that?
Well, that's actually what started wanting to work on this podcast, is I had a bunch of people who were like, hey, I would love to be involved acting in something like this, but I can't. And that's what some of our remote ideas that we're developing come up with. It's like, oh, I've actually have a friend who lives in England, and he is a terrific voice actor, but he was just like, he also is a great live performer, but he was just like, I can't naturally be there for these live shows. So we created a role for him in one of our shows where people had to find tape recordings of like a doctor who had given like he had a doctor historian who had taken notes on things before. So it was like, here, if you want to record these, and this way you can be involved in the shows and you're still out here and you're still a part of it, but you're all the way out in England. So it was like, he really wanted to be involved, and we found this solution to find a way for him still to be involved. And then that's where we expanded the idea of, what if we did remote sessions or podcasts? Because I've got friends all over the world who want to be involved and are seeking acting jobs. And this way they can be a part of that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that it's really cool to not only bring together your community, but also just have the ability to bring together literally anybody from anywhere in the world.
Exactly. And it also brings out different perspectives, because some people have been like, hey, there's this story of, because a lot of times we draw on history or ghost stories or things like that, because horror is this really interesting medium where you can tell a lot of different kinds of stories. So what it does is it kind of brings the outside perspective of, hey, locally, we've got this legend. Can you use that for a story? Here's my perspective on it. And it makes for a very creative environment.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I mean, speaking of, the abilities of the world and creative things, I mean, I know that with every show, with every production, there's always, a certain amount of things that you have to consider, like, live shows and emergency exits and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were to be like, hey, you don't have to worry about anything. Like, it doesn't you don't even think about like what's realistic in terms of like gravity. What would you guys like to create for a dream project?
Okay, so I've had people ask this question before, and there's always two answers. There's kind of like the semi-joke answer, and then there's the real answer. There's this, I don't know if you've ever heard of Evil Dead the Musical.
Mm-hmm.
It is a musical based off of the franchise Evil Dead. And my wacky dream is to have a live, fully interactive, immersive production of that, complete with splash zone, but to do it at like a campground. So like renting out a cabin, or just creating the set entirely to be that cabin in the woods with the full effects that the audience can kind of sit in and be a part of. But if talking about more like long-term, what like the big dream would be, I'd want to own like a hotel or a bed and breakfast or some, like one of these big historical houses, but set it up so that the people who are staying there can experience long form stories. So more than just an hour or two, something that they can bite their teeth into for say a whole weekend or a whole week, that we could use the acreage for on the grounds to create this really, really big experience that they could just absorb themselves in completely. And also bringing in artisans, kind of again from other places, costume designers, to create maybe, hey, you want to rent or even purchase a costume for the whole week? Here's a costumer who made something specially for you. Or bringing in artisans that create things like, like soaps or candles or paintings or sculptures that can both create unique environments, but also be something to expose audiences to, like, hey, if you want to bring something home with you, here's something a local artisan made. And so kind of creating a space for those artisans to have a source of income and an outlet for creativity, and at the same time giving those audiences that complete immersive experience.
That would be, I feel like that would be like the craziest, most awesome adventure vacation ever.
That's I think the LARPer in me, just because I've been LARPing since I was probably my late high school years. So the LARP also kind of adds to that element of, I want something engrossing and fun. And yeah, if I could do something for a whole weekend, that's what I would do all the time for LARP anyway. We'd get dressed up and play in the woods for 3 or 4 days. So I don't know, making that a kind of experience for a big show. Like, can you imagine like a murder mystery, but it takes 3 days to tell that story, and it can happen at any time. Like, okay, in the middle of the night, you get someone banging on your door and say, hey, it's 2:00 in the morning, but a body's been discovered. So just, I don't know, that seems wacky, but so much fun. And I don't know, you could just have some really great experiences doing that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, having different actors, it might not end the same way. I mean, it definitely won't end the same way every weekend or every week that you guys decide to do it.
Exactly. Like, you could have okay, the definite answer. Say again, we're taking that example of a murder mystery. Like, okay, this character definitely did it. But you write the story in a way where it's like, okay, but the audience could, I don't know, say that guy over there did it and be completely wrong. But that's also fun too, is, hey, did we get it right? No, you kind of got it wrong. Okay, cool. Maybe we'll get him next time then.
Yeah, for sure. Like, did this person get away?
Exactly. And so, I don't know, that seems really cool to me.
For sure. I mean, I think that, if you were to create a world like this, what are some of the rooms that you're imagining, and like how you're putting this together in this glorious B&B mansion?
It'd be like, yeah, kind of like an Airbnb meets a mansion meets a bed and breakfast type of thing. Well, number one, I would want that experience needs to start from the get-go. So I'm imagining like this really nice parlor, like front parlor, that also serves as a place for people to check in and get ready. Part of it is I am kind of imagining those classic settings of what you would find in the stories, the parlor, the really elegant ballroom or dining room type of setting. But the real dream would be having themed rooms. So you check into a room and you're like, okay, I'm going to get like this one bedroom for the entire experience. But it's different than any of the other bedrooms you find. So everything has been designed individually. Everything is special. It's like, okay, this room is made of like black velvet and silk curtains. And this other one is, well, it's kind of like pink and frilly and more like inspired by like French Rococo era. And then you've got this other room that's inspired by like Gothic Victorian English fashion or something, things like that to kind of keep it unique. And then each of those bedrooms also can serve as something individual and something special. To help tell the story. I'm also imagining like this very lavish topiary garden with maybe even like a topiary maze. I don't know. If the sky is the limit, why not add a hedge maze into everything and have that be something exciting that people can kind of just have fun in, even if it's not part of the story. Like, who doesn't love a hedge maze?
I agree. I personally would love all of those things, all of the above. I think it'd be really cool just to be able to stay there, to stay in that story overnight, to not know, like, okay, yes, I'm going to bed, but am I really?
Am I really? Like, is what's going to happen? It's also, stories like that also means you get to like lay the seeds out. So like, I imagine everyone's sitting down at dinner and like the actors are there, and also kind of like, you have the serving staff, and you have the people who quote live there, or people who are other quote guests there for the weekend. But they're like sprinkling in the seeds of a story very slowly, and you kind of imagine like this big dining room table that all that's happening at, and then everyone goes to bed, and then suddenly, I don't know, like 11 o'clock at night, a scream rings through the house, and everyone just starts rushing down the stairs to find out what's happening. Like, if you ever saw the movie Clue, something like that, where there's just a bunch of people running around trying to figure out what's going on, because it's chaos, but in the best way.
For sure. I cannot wait to hear more about this. I hope you have your fairy maze. Like, definitely want to be one of the first people to hear about this amazing, amazing experience.
Oh, it's the dream. One day.
But in terms of like shorter term dreams, tell us a little bit about like where can we find you guys? Like, where can we learn more information about what's coming next? I know that you mentioned a couple of shows that are coming up, a couple of podcasts.
Yep. Everything that you're going to find is updated on escapismproductions.com. But we also do use social media. So, at escapism_productions on Instagram, and then just Escapism Productions on Facebook. We're trying to get our Twitter up and running. But because you have so few characters, we're still trying to figure out the swing of things. So anytime we have any sort of show announcements, they're going to be posted there. And that's when we do things like cast announcements, posters, everything like that, we announce on social media and on the website.
Cool. Perfect. I feel like Twitter is like a personal challenge to design some sort of witty saying in the very minimalistic way.
Exactly. It's like, what can I come up with a graphic that just catches people's eye? No, it's got to be a certain size. I only have 160 characters to get people really interested. Do I use hashtags? Do I not use hashtags?
The options are definitely limitless. Well, I just want to say thank you for joining us. Thank you for the incredible stories. I am so excited to hear more about them and learn more when you know, without spoiling too many details out there in the real world.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been absolutely wonderful. I could talk about this all day, so thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, of course. And of course, I want to say thank you for all our listeners, and we'll have links down here for you guys. And with that, I will say see you later.
Bye.